I decided to make a video about the best $2,000 gaming PC build that you can buy right now. Now this is my opinion. If you think that you have a better PC build for gaming, let me know in the comment section, but I think this one will be the best for gaming. Now if you want a PC build for video editing or streaming, then that's going to be totally different from this PC build. That's especially for gaming, and that's why I made this PC build around the GPU, because this is the most important component for gaming. Now if you want a PC build that's for streaming or video editing, then you may want to prioritize the CPU and pick a GPU that's good, but not as good as this gaming PC build. You will have the link to this PC build and more PCs down below in the description in case you have a budget above or below $2,000. Without much to say, let's start with the specifications. So with the first component, I'm going to talk about the CPU. This one is the i5-12600K, the latest version of Intel's i5. This one is a 10 cores, 16 threads CPU, so it's going to be really good for streaming and video editing as well. Maybe it's not going to be as good as the i7-12700K, but keep in mind that for gaming, the i7 and the i5 are going to perform actually really similar, and the main difference for gaming, like I said before, is going to be the GPU, so it makes no sense if I put an i7-12700K and then I downgrade the GPU, because the gaming performance would be much worse than this CPU-GPU combination. Now I'll talk about the GPU in a little bit, but this i5 is actually a great balance between gaming, streaming and multitasking, and it's actually really important for you to buy the K version, not the i5-12400F or 12400KF, nothing that it has an F at the end, because this means that it doesn't have integrated graphics. Now you may ask, why do I need integrated graphics when you're putting dedicated graphics? Well, if you're going to do some video editing, this will help you out a lot with the video playback. If you don't do any video editing or Photoshop or anything like that, then maybe consider buying the F version since it's cheaper, but I don't think buying an F version is worth the price, considering there is not a lot of money difference and you're getting a way better CPU overall, because you're also getting a great CPU for video and photo editing. So for the CPU, we have a great balance between gaming and multitasking. Then for the CPU cooler, I went with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 240mm all-in-one liquid cooler. Now this one, it's $90 actually. It's really cheap for what it brings, and it's going to be anything you want on a CPU liquid cooler, especially for the i5-12600K. Now if I decided to went with the i7 or the i9, then this one might not be enough, and if you're going to upgrade to the i9 12th gen in the future, then you might consider upgrading this down the line. But for the i5-12600K, you don't need more than this at all, so this component is going to be great for our build. Now for the motherboard, I went with the ASROCK H670 Riptide ATX motherboard. This one is around $150, and I put this because I'm not considering CPU overclocking. Now if you want to do CPU overclocking, the motherboard is going to be much more expensive, and you may want to go with the C690 instead of this one. This one will allow you to do memory overclocking, so if you want to overclock the RAM, this one is going to be enough. Now I don't think CPU overclocking is going to be necessary for gaming, but if you decide to do CPU overclocking, keep in mind that this motherboard will not support it. But like I said before, I'm keeping this PC build below $2,000, so I decided to go with this motherboard and do not overclock the CPU. For the memory, I picked 16 gigs of RAM, 2x8 of course, of DDR4 3200MHz CL16 memory. Now like I said before, you can overclock this to 3600 without any problems, and it also has RGB, so it's pretty nice for our build. And for gaming, it's going to be enough, because the difference between 16 gigs and 32 gigs of RAM for gaming is non-existent basically. Now if you want to do some heavy video editing or maybe a streaming with a lot of tabs opened, then you may want to consider going with 32 gigs of RAM. But if you're going to do gaming, even streaming, I don't think that you need 32 gigs of RAM. I think 16 is going to be way more than enough, but you have to keep in mind that this PC build is also upgradable, so feel free to upgrade the parts that you need. But if you want to keep it below $2,000, I think this build is going to be the right one for you. Then for the storage, I picked the Western Digital 1TB of M.2 SSD. This one, once again, going to be enough for our build and to put your favorite games on this M.2 drive. Now the storage that you need depends on each and every case, but for the average gamer, I think 1TB is going to be enough. Now if you're working with heavy files, then you may want to upgrade it, but I think that 1TB is going to be enough. Then for the most important part of this build is going to be the GPU. I went with the GeForce RTX 3070 Ti 8 gigs of VRAM video card. This one is around around $1,050. Now I know it's expensive, this is how the GPU market is nowadays, but it's actually dropping prices a little bit, and that's something that's really nice to see. Now this GPU is going to be capable of course of 1080p 240Hz experience, but if you're going to buy this PC, I would recommend at least a 1440p 144Hz monitor, because this one will support it. And this graphics card is actually going to be great for an entry level of 4K. It's going to run 4K games at 60 FPS on average in almost every game. Now of course this depends on the settings that you're going to play, but for most of the games 60 FPS on average on 4K is going to be possible. So if you want a 4K monitor, this one will support it as well, but I would recommend a balance between 1080p and 4K, and this will be 1440p 144Hz for you to play competitive games at a high refresh rate, but also keep a good quality. So that's why I recommend a 1440p 144Hz, and it's actually not going to be as expensive as a 1440p 240Hz monitor, or as expensive as a 4K 144Hz monitor. So that's something to keep in mind. Now if you're going to spend a lot of money on a monitor, then yes, you may want to go with a 4K 144Hz option, but my recommended monitor is going to be a 1440p 144Hz monitor. Now you will have the exact model of the monitor I recommend buying down below in the description with this PC build. Then for the case, I went with the CORSAIR 4000D airflow version. This one, for the price that you're paying, you're actually getting great airflow, and this combined with the liquid cooler for the CPU and the 3 RGB fans that I picked from CORSAIR, you're getting a great airflow overall for this PC, so you don't have to worry about temperatures. This one will run cooled at all times, even on the highest settings, on the highest demanding video games, for you not to have any cooling issues. And the price for this case is actually $90, so it's really decent for the price that you're getting. Now for the power supply, I went with a 750 80 plus gold power supply. This one will allow you to make upgrades down the line, such as the CPU maybe to the i7 12th gen or the i9 12th gen. This one will actually be enough for those upgrades. Now if you want to go with a 3090 and then change again the CPU to the i9, then you may want to go with at least an 850 watts power supply, but for this type of build, the RTX 3070 Ti and the i5 750 watts is going to be enough, and it's even going to be enough for a CPU upgrade down the line. And the last component are going to be those 3 RGB fans for you to put it on the front of the airflow case. So you get the back stock fan from the case, and then on the front you get these awesome CORSAIR 3-pack fans, and then on the top you're going to have the fans from the CPU cooler. So overall, for $1,987, you're getting, I think, the best gaming PC build that you can get at the moment for this price. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, let me know in the comment section if you think that you have a better PC build for the same exact price, but I really think that this one is going to be the right choice for you if you're looking for a gaming PC that's $2,000. Now, is this better than a Prebuilt PC? Well, I have a whole video talking about PC build versus Prebuilt PC, and it's really important for you to watch it because maybe you prefer a Prebuilt PC instead of a PC build, and that's something that you should really do your research on. So you have that video in the top right of the screen, and if you found this video helpful, leave a like and subscribe, but most importantly, hit the bell button so you get notified when I upload this type of content. Thank you guys for watching, thank you for the support, and I will see you on the next one.